Katie, as you know, many dancers struggle with obstacles on their road to being a professional dancer. And I'd love to hear from you any obstacles, whether it was body image or food related, or maybe just dance related, that you felt like you dealt with and even overcame.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I had a pretty, like, I don't have much to complain about in my upbringing and my path. I got very lucky. But I did, of course, I struggled with body confidence issues and self-esteem issues. And I think the most apparent time for me was when I was like brand new, like just joining company. I was like 17, 18. It was new country, new company, new language. And I was so like, I want to be perfect. I want to like make my mark. I want to just like be, you know, I had all these expectations coming in as a fresh like quarter ballet dancer, which, you know, your expectations are squashed within moments of being there. You're like, oh, this is what it's actually. But just being in that really stressful environment for the first time, and everything was so foreign, and I had such high expectations for myself. I think that's when I started to like realize like food could play a negative role in my life, and it felt like for me it was something that I could like really control, and that was the only thing I could control at that time, and it ended up like kind of backfiring. And I luckily like I realized it soon enough. I was like, something's not working. Like I don't feel right. But yeah. That was definitely like the biggest moment in my career when I realized like I could either go one of two ways, and started to go, you know, down a wrong path, and realized no, there's so many other options than that.
Absolutely. And you know, you bring up a really good point, which I think a lot of dancers struggle with. I know I struggled with it. Perfectionism, or at least going through this stage where you are trying to perfect your performance, and then you find that like, you know, food maybe could be something that I can control with that. Lucky for you, and I would say I can relate to this, we figured out quickly that can either go down one or two roads. It's either going to go down a road that's not going to help your performance, or it's going to go down a road where you can actually really learn how to fuel your body and use food as something that's beneficial.
Exactly. Yeah, so after I was in ABT2, right out of JKO, I actually got a contract with Staatsballet Berlin. So I was dancing in Berlin for about 2 years. And I had a great experience with ABT2, and I even apprenticed with ABT. But then this opportunity came in my lap, and you know, I was, like I said, so young and so naive, and immediately I was like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to go dance in Europe. So yeah, it was definitely an eye-opening experience for.
I hear that often. I think that when dancers get their first contracts, or when they're just younger and they are going off to just a new place and a new country, I think that's tough in of itself, aside from having to figure out how to live on your own and how to care for yourself with food. So that's got to be a huge learning curve, and doing that in another country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that was a time in your career that, like, if you could pinpoint where you made a connection, what you were putting on your plate was going to impact performance?
Definitely. That was definitely it, because that was a time where, like, I think because I was so unfamiliar with the cuisine there and the, you know, the names of the food in the grocery store, I would only like buy what I was familiar with. And I was working so much, and I started to realize, like, I feel so just like malnourished and like depleted, and like I need something's got to change. So that is when I realized, all right, like,
yeah,
it can be used for as much better, like, productive.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then, you know, take us into now where you're at now. You're in the company, you're at ABT. I'd love to hear how you would compare just fueling your workouts to fueling your dancing.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point. And so I'll hit both those. When I'm with ABT and we're on a regular schedule, we're touring, we're performing, our schedule is so insane. Like, it's so important to just have snacks on snacks on snacks. So if it's like a rehearsal day at 8:90 in New York, like, I'm a big breakfast person. I always have to wake up, first thing I do, breakfast. It's usually like Greek yogurt, some granola, fruit. And then I get to the studios and we're there from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's a really long time to go, you know, while you're exercising and you're like getting all these rehearsals in. And we do have like a 1 hour lunch break from 3 to 4, but that's a big 10 to 3 is a big chunk of time. So that's when I like make sure my locker is full of snacks. I've got bars, I've got bananas, I've got fruit in my bag. So like that for me is the most important thing. Like if I'm hangry, I do not, at the beginning of the week, like I have to do something like, okay, I need to make sure I've got all these snacks. Like I have to be prepared because I know it's going to make for a much better experience. And especially like if we're on tour, it's funny. There's like a group of us. The first thing when we get off that bus from the airport, we all get an Uber. We'll go to Trader Joe's or Whole Foods and we'll stock up because we know like we're not going to have the time after a show or in between like rehearsals and performance to go get food, get proper dinner. Sometimes room service is already closed. So it does become a priority. Like you do think about it and it's not so much as like controlling it, but it's like what do I need to do to prepare to make sure I'm nourished properly? How can I like to do the performance that I have to do?
A lot of the work that I do with dancers is trying to teach them to move away from these restrictive eating habits. But at the same time, in order to do that, we have to learn how to actually plan out a balanced menu, especially for if you are going on tour. You have to, it's not having control, it's just planning ahead and being on top of your schedule and planning for days that you're going to have like hours of rehearsals leading into performances. And you know, the logistics of getting back late from a performance and not having room service be available, I think it's a really good point that the idea of planning your day and your food intake is something that is so beneficial for a dancer.
Yeah, it is. And it does take up like a big chunk of my mental capacity.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And then now being home with COVID, obviously things are much different. You aren't in those situations. You have more time. How would you say it's changed now?
Right. So to be completely honest, like when this first happened and my body realized like you're not working as much as before, like what's wrong with you? Like I did feel myself mentally go to a place where I'm like, well, maybe I should cut back on. No, like this is not going to, especially if I'm going to do like home workouts and all this stuff. Like even though it's not the same thing as being in a rehearsal studio, you're exercising, conditioning, you're training. But also like we work so hard and for so many long hours as dancers, like every day throughout the year. So I had to like tell myself it's okay to take this time and like let my body like feel the way it's still, you know, it's telling me exactly what it needs.
During this time, now is the opportunity for dancers to actually start listening to their body. Whereas like those days when you're on tour, you don't have the time to think about if you're hungry, if you're full, what you're craving. Like you have to go to Trader Joe's, you have to stock up on as many snackable, packable items and pack them with you, whether that's what you're craving or not, right? So like that's one path, that's one aspect of life. And then now you have this time where you actually can start listening to your body. You're not necessarily moving as much as you would be if you were commuting on the subways and going back and forth from classes and conditioning. But you still are doing exercise and you still have to honor your body's performance. And it sounds like you're really have discovered that balance of doing it now while we're mainly at home versus doing it when you're back in New York and back in the studios.
Yeah, absolutely. And also like during this whole time, it's also like, you know, I've been spending much more time at home, like with family and with other people. And I'm used to living on my own. Like I've been on my own since I was like 16, 17.
Sure.
It also means like I prepare meals only for myself and I only what I like or what I'm going to buy. And so it has been kind of a learning process to learn like, oh, I need to like coordinate with the other people around me. And like, not everyone's going to have the same taste as me and that's okay. And like, I can, you know, bend my ways for, you know, those purposes.
Yeah. So now kind of shifting gears to when you are in your performance mode, I would love to hear how you plan your fueling for performance versus like your recovery meals. So something that always comes to my mind is like a week like Swan Lake because it's so physically intense. I would love to hear how you plan before the show. Do you have nerves? Can you eat before the show? Are you snacking in between the show? So kind of walk us through your performance.
So I usually have like bananas a day during Swan Lake.
For all that potassium.
But yeah, all the potassium because it's standing and cramping and then jumping. But yeah, Swan Lake is a rough week, especially for the girls in the core. You're doing 8 act 2s every single day. It's intense. But that's a week where I really just kind of like let myself just listen to my body. And like if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat what I want to eat. I don't need to think about like, oh, well, did I like pack like the right protein bar, or like I already had a banana. Should I have? I'm like, if I'm hungry, if I want a candy bar, if I want, you know, a chicken sandwich, if I like whatever, like that's when you're like, okay, I know I'm working my butt off, so I'm gonna fuel, and I'm not gonna think about it, but I'm gonna fuel to like replenish. As a dancer, like I do find it hard to eat heavily before performance. So like I'll snack and I'll snack and I'll snack all day up until the show, but I always save the like big chunk of my meal or my day for after the performance, which like it makes my body feel better, but it is tiring when you get home and all you want to do is sleep. I'm like, but I do still have to eat because I know like I just done like 2 swan lakes today. So it's a really hard balance to find. Like sometimes one day like it works better, and one day I'm like, why did I do this? I should have like eaten before. Now I need to go to sleep. So it's, and every year we do it, it's different. Like every year we do it, my body reacts differently to it. So that is really, yeah, it's a hard balance to find. And every girl is different. We all have our different ways of reacting to that week.
One thing that you say though that I think stands out is, you know, no matter how tired you are at the end of the show, it's almost like you know you have to give yourself some type of recovery meal. And I think it's important for dancers to realize that your recovery meal isn't only acting as a recovery meal, but it's also prepping you for the next day when you know, when you have to wake up and go to class and then rehearsal and have do the show all over again, right?
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, there was definitely a time where I would get home to the theater and like not have time to make a deep meal or just want to go to sleep, and like it would just be full of cereal I'd be coming home to, and it was like great, I love it, it's easy, it's quick, I can go to bed. But then, you know, the next morning I'm like, I feel like I'm still so hungry, like I'm so lethargic.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, I learned like I had to make a point, like if I'm tired, like I need to fuel, I need a meal.
Absolutely. And do you find that you would snack like in between the show or within the show during an intermission, or is that something that you usually do?
It depends. I mean, sometimes like when we're doing Swan Lake, I'm on act 1, act 2, act 3. Like I don't have any time really. The only time I'm off for like changing costumes and changing headpieces. But if I do like get an act 3 off, which happens occasionally, and I usually am back at my spot eating like nuts or some kind of snack, or at ABT on backstage on both sides we have a water table, and on the water table is a candy jar.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Yeah, before every show they refill like Starburst and mints. So yeah, I definitely hoard a few of those Starbursts and just keep them at my spot in case of emergencies.
It makes sense though, because even just the quick sugars are going to just help you get through that act.
Exactly. I think it's like, I could be making this up. I think it's even like in our contract, like we have to have like a sugar source during the show out there.
Interesting.
Yeah. Every show the stage filled up at half hour, and it goes by like third to act 3, it's all gone. It's all empty.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And would you say Swan Lake is probably one of the harder weeks to have to balance with this?
Definitely Swan Lake and Bayadere.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, those two definitely have been the hardest weeks I've ever had experience.
Now, talk to me a little bit about COVID. And obviously, the company, everyone's home. How are you staying motivated? I know you mentioned in the very beginning, it got to your head maybe just a little bit for like 2 days where you were like, should I be eating less? I'm not dancing as much. But then that you realized was, you don't have to do that. So how has the adjustment been, and how have you been staying motivated? Because it's such a scary, unknown time right now.
Yeah, it is, and it's terrifying, and like I have my good days and I have my bad days, and especially in the beginning, like it was really hard because automatically my mind was like, well, I'm gonna get so far behind. Like I was training so hard up to this point, like I'm losing all the work that I did. Like I'm gonna fall behind. I don't have access to a studio. Some people do. Like, and it took a while for me to like learn like how to be kind to myself and like let myself just, you know, accept that this is happening. And it's been really great within AB. Like we all take company class on Zoom every morning, and you see everybody in their kitchen. Like some people are in their studios and some people are like on their back patio, and you just realize that everybody really just wants to be together and wants to be experiencing this together again. And it's been so long since we've been able to do that. So just kind of like reaching out and like experiencing those things with my colleagues has really helps, because then it doesn't seem so personal. Oh my gosh, I'm the only one like suffering from this. Like I'm gonna be definitely. So everybody is dealing with this. Is like just be nice to yourself. Like
You know, one thing that I find myself constantly reminding a lot of dancers is that, I mean, everyone, every country, everyone is just stuck in the same boat right now. We have to, like you said, be kind to ourselves and realize that even though we don't necessarily know how long it's going to be, it is going to be a temporary situation. Like, we will get into the studio one day.
Right. It's not like ballet is just going to cease to exist after this. Like,
exactly.
Been here a really long time. It's not going to go anywhere. We're always
exactly. Definitely.
Yeah.
So a lot of dancers definitely are struggling with how do they stay in shape while being at home. And, you know, because you're both a dancer and a fitness trainer, I really would love to hear any advice or any tips that you have for dancers in regards to just them staying in shape as a dancer.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest piece of advice would be to start small and work your way up. Don't be overwhelmed by things you see on the internet or things that other people are posting and immediately think like, oh, I need to try this crazy like new workout fad or this new workout trick. Start small, and if you have the resources, if you have somebody in your company or your school who is maybe not certified but is in the fitness world or conditioning or a physical therapist, especially if you have access to a physical therapist, approach them and hey, like, what's the best way to go about this? How should I start? Like, what's the best plan? But I mean, for like young students who are trying to look for extra conditioning, I would definitely start with like looking into Pilates and some yoga stuff to really like have a good stable base, and then to build up from there. One of my favorite apps that I've been using is Alo Moves. So it's the brand Alo Yoga, and they have yoga classes, they have HIIT classes, they have Pilates. They have like cardio kickboxing, and it's all like 25 minutes, 45 minutes, you get a huge range. But they're all very easy to follow along, and they're all like, they cover every like workout regime you could do at home right now. And so once you've like found, you know, a system that kind of works for you, it also gives them a chance to realize like what activity works best for them. Like some people may like a HIIT workout a lot more than cardio or than like a Pilates toning. Start small, start safe. Especially if you're doing a lot of like jump squats or burpees in your home, like start very slowly, see how your shins react the next day. You know, we don't want to be jumping on concrete when we're doing ballet class. We also like, you know, for jumping and conditioning class, we want to be safe about that as well.
That's such a good point. It's kind of the same with nutrition too. I mean, really just staying away from a lot of those more severe, like kickstart types of diets, which I think can be very attractive during this time because dancers are so scared about losing the work that they've done or wanting to not gain any weight during this time. So I feel like dancers as a community are more vulnerable during a time like now, so wanting to just like push themselves through conditioning without really knowing, like you said, without having a strong base and a strong core, and then probably really being at risk for coming back to dance with an injury.
Right. And yeah, you have to remember like the whole point of going about a conditioning regimen is to prevent injuries and to enhance your technique.
That's such a good point.
You know, we don't want to go in the opposite direction.
That's such a good point. I think that it can be very easy to think of conditioning or cross-training as like a calorie burn, when in fact, the goal of them should be for injury prevention.
Exactly. And one thing I really try to keep in mind when I'm doing my conditioning classes, especially if it's for other dancers or my colleagues, I really try to pay attention to how I create an exercise for the purpose of enhancing like a ballet technique. So like, it's not like it is for anybody who wants to work out, but there is a purpose behind every exercise and every kind of circuit that I give. I do put the thought into how it's going to feed into like ballet technique and how you're going to use this. So yeah, if they can realize that connection, it pays off immensely.
Yeah. Katie, can dancers work with you virtually if they wanted to right now?
They can, yeah. I've been working with a lot of people virtually. Even like ABT, I've been teaching a conditioning class for the whole company virtually.
How can dancers get in touch with you if they want to set something up to work with you?
So my email is probably the best. It's katieborn1@gmail.com. I put information out on my Katie Born Fitness page when I teach, because I usually teach a fitness class once a week, so I'll put a sign up for that. on
Definitely.
that. But
That's
yeah,
great.
I love working one-on-one, especially with younger dancers.
I think there's a lot of them that really need it, especially during this time. I think this is such a great time for us to take advantage of actually starting to build base that could really get you back into the studio. One thing dancers have to realize is that when we get back into the studio, they can't compare themselves to when they left the studio. But if we can at least start working on their core and their base now while they have the time, that could be super beneficial.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You're so right.
So my final question is definitely a general one, but I just want to hear what you think.
Okay.
How would you define a healthy dancer?
A healthy dancer for me is a happy dancer. I mean, that maybe sounds very cliche, and I mean, I've experienced so many dancers who are so unhappy just being in this world and surrounded by this stress. And so many of us, as you've said, like we're perfectionists, and sometimes I even feel guilty to it too, and I let it really like beat me down, and I realize like I'm doing this because I love it. So why am I feeling like this? So yeah, if you're doing it, if you remember why you're doing it, you're being happy, you're being healthy. Once you're in the studio and you're just miserable all the time, like it's not worth it. So
such a good point. You know, at the end of the day, dance, most of us go into dance because it's a passion. And if that passion shifts from being a love to something of fear and anxiety, I think that's when you have to assess, maybe it's time for me to take 2 steps back, whether that means taking time off or pursuing another road, like for example, fitness, or in my from my perspective, nutrition. You know, there's many different routes that dancers can go by. So I think it's really important, exactly what you're saying, is to just make sure that you're happy with what you're doing and that you're waking up and you like going to class and you enjoy it and it's making you feel good physically and mentally.
Yeah, exactly.
Such good insight today. I really can't thank you enough.
It was so fun. I enjoyed talking with you so much.
It's good. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to say? No pressure at all. I just like to kind of leave the mic open.
I mean, I just want to say to like all the dancers, everyone really who's out there struggling right now and trying to keep up with this level that they've set for themselves and dealing with perfectionism. Like, this is also advice to myself. Just like let things happen the way they're happening right now. Like, be kind to your body. If you're taking bar, holding onto your staircase, and you don't feel like you can hit that perfect fit position, it's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world. If you can just do a little bit every day, like that's fine. And accept that and be happy with it, because like these circumstances nobody can prepare for. So yeah, I keep saying, like, be kind,
absolutely,
forgive.
Absolutely. Listen, I can relate to that personally. Honestly, I don't love virtual classes. Even in the beginning of quarantine, I had to tell myself, you know, let me lower the bar of expectation of what I'm expecting myself to do, and know that I will get back to this down the road. But right now I had to take 2 steps back in order to take a step forward. And I think you make such a good point that, you know, we can't expect what we expected in the studio. We can't have the same expectations now while we're home.
Exactly.
So Katie, thank you so much. I will definitely talk to you soon. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.